ladies and gentlemen. My name is Zeriko Hakathos, and welcome to Demonosophy and Beyond. Today, I'm going to talk about why Christianity is not a monotheistic religion and further things. But in order to understand Christianity, you have to go to the roots. Christianity is an offshoot of Judaism. And in order to understand Judaism, you have to understand the root of that, which is both the Kabbalah as well as historical and archaeological facts. So, if you go to the Kabbalah lists 10 God forms that were created from Ein Sof, which is the eternal darkness. So it goes Ihaya, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing this right, but I'm going to provide a link to the outline that I've written so that you can read it yourself and study more on it. The second one is Jehovah. The third one is Jehovah Elohim. The fourth is El. The fifth is Elohim Jabor. The sixth is Eloah Vadath. The seventh is Jehovah Zeboath. The eighth is Elohim Zeboath. The ninth is El Shai Shaddai. And the 10th is Adonai Melech. Now, we're going to go into what historians have to say about the early Jews. In worldhistory.org, I quote, it says, Amzalag notes that the Edomites, and Amzalag, I guess is an expert, notes that the Edomites, Kenites, Moabites, and Midianites all worship Yahweh, which is the early pronunciation of Jehovah, to one degree or another, and that there is evidence the Edomites, who operated the mines at Timnah, converted an earlier Egyptian temple of Hathor to worship Yahweh. In Britannica.com, it says, as Judaism became a universal practice rather than merely a local religion, Elohim, plural in form but understood in the singular, meaning God, tended to replace Yahweh to demonstrate the universal sovereignty of Israel's God over all others. In The Secret Teaching of All Ages by Manly P. Hall, says, when the plural and androgynous Hebrew word Elohim was translated into the singular and sexless word God, the opening chapters of Genesis were rendered comparatively meaningless. Let's see, at ampproject.org, it says modern biblical scholarship and archaeological discoveries in and around Israel show that ancient Israelites did not always believe in a single universal God. Thomas Romer, a Hebrew Bible expert and professor at Collège de France and University of Lausanne, don't know how to pronounce it, says biblical texts are not direct historical sources. They reflect the ideas, the ideologies of their authors, and of the historical context in which they were written. This one right here shows that there are some books that are not in sync with the rest of the Bible. And that is because the influence of the historical time they were in, the author of each book, influenced how they wrote that book. Going back to ampproject.org, it says, going by the name, the main god of the ancient Israelites was not Yahweh, but El, the chief deity in the Canaanite pantheon. Now, those who grew up in Christianity and actually took the time to read the Bible, the Israelites, the Canaanites were the enemies of the Israelites. So it's very interesting to see that one of the titles of God, El, is a Canaanite god. And we will go a little bit more further into that later. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into the Bible about the subject. So in Deuteronomy 32:8-9, the cabal of gods, these are the 10 god forms that come from Saint Ein Sof, they divvy up the land. And mind you, when it talks about different lands, it's not just talking about like the physical earth, but also the spiritual realm, because they overlap. Let's see. Deuteronomy 32:8-9. So, starting at 8, it says, when the Most High, and this is supposed to be El, assigned lands to the nations, when the Most High assigned lands to the nations, when he divided out the human race, he established the boundaries of the peoples according to the number of his heavenly court. Now, his heavenly court are going to be those 10 gods. For the people of Israel belong to the Lord. Note that there is a different title used here. That reflects the other God that was known as Lord, like Adonai. I think it's Adonai. For the people of Israel belong to the Lord. Jacob is his special possession. Okay. Then shows that the assigned God of Israel gets pissed off at Jewish polytheism, which also proves that the Jews were not monotheistic. If you go to Jeremiah 2:26-28. I'm a little rusty at finding my Bible books. Give me a sec. Jeremiah. All these are coming from the New Living Translation, by the way. Okay, so at Jeremiah chapter 2, 26-28, it says, Israel is like a thief who feels shame only when he gets caught. They, their kings, officials, priests, and prophets, all are alike in this. To an image carved from a piece of wood, they say, you are my father. To an idol chiseled from a block of stone, they say, you are my mother. They turn their backs on me, but in times of trouble, they cry out to me, come and save us. But why not call on these gods you have made? When trouble comes, let them save you if they can. For you have as many gods as there are towns in Judah. Now, we know that Israel, or the Jews, had connections to other places that worshipped multiple gods. So there are going to be some of the names of those gods or titles that were put that were later on merged and considered one god. There are going to be some titles that come from different places. One, this quote comes from worldhistory.org, says, although the biblical narratives depict Yahweh as the sole creator God, Lord of the universe, and God of the Israelites especially, initially he seems to have been Canaanite in origin and subordinate to the supreme God El. So here we see a distinction between Yahweh, who is Jehovah, and El. And we actually see that Jehovah is not a creator God, but in submission to a higher authority. The next one comes from The Secret Teachings of All Ages by Manly P. Hall. And it says, The mysteries of Adonis or Adani were celebrated annually in many parts of Egypt, Phoenicia, and Byblos. The name Adonis or Adani means Lord and was a designation applied to the sun and later borrowed by the Jews as an exoteric name of their God. And that would be the word Adonai. So later on, not later on, but we also have proof that this cabal of gods started to turn on itself. If you read 1 Samuel 14:47, you see that King Saul wars with the Moabite and the Edomites. Okay, these were people that worshipped at least one of those god forms. Then you had David, who is a Moabite, who later becomes king. He wars with his own people. This can be found at 1 Samuel 22:3-4, and 2 Samuel 8:2. Then Israel wars with Judah several times. And this comes from livescience.com. Livescience.com says, the Hebrew Bible claims that Israel and Judah often fought each other, sometimes allying with different powers in the region. In their last war, Judah allied with Assyria, while Israel allied with another power named Aram. This last war led to the destruction of Israel by an Assyrian force in 723 BC. Okay, so one God was supposed to look over Israel. Another God was supposed to have jurisdiction over Judah. And we see that these different nations that were supposed to be, in cooperation, were warring against one another constantly. We also see evidence of this in contemporary times, where different factions of Christianity war with one another. They speak out against one another. They basically hate each other. And then every different faction believes that they are right. So, I'm also covering what this cabal promotes. Okay, we already know that Christianity, the Bible, and, tracing back to these gods, they promote warfare. Okay, we know that they promote slavery, and there are several biblical examples of that. You've got Ephesians 5-8. You've got Colossians 3:22-24. There's 1 Timothy 6 verses 1 and 2. There's Titus chapter 2, 9 and 10. And I'll even read some of these. So let's go with Ephesians 5-8. And all these scriptures, they basically say the same thing. So I might as well just read one. These are copy and paste pretty much. That's Ephesians 6:5-8. Okay, it says, slaves, obey your earthly masters with deep respect and fear. Serve them sincerely as you would serve Christ. Try to please them all the time, not just when they are watching you. As slaves of Christ, do the will of God with all your heart. Work with enthusiasm as though you were working for the Lord rather than for people. Remember that the Lord will reward each one of us for the good we do, whether we are slaves or free. Then, people may say, oh, well, the Bible also says the masters have to be good to the slaves. Yes, verse 9 says, treat your slaves in the same way. Don't threaten them. Remember, you both have the same master in heaven, and he has no favorites. But if we look back at history, we see how well that goes. The Bible also condones rape through forced marriage. This is found in Judges 21:10 through 24. And it talks about how when the Israelites were going against certain nations, they were to kill any woman that was not a virgin. They were to kill children, and they were to take the virgins and the men that were not married. Those virgins were to be given in marriage to those men. Okay, so these were men that they did not know, and then they were going to have sex with them. This was forced upon them. The same scripture in Judges 10 condones the murdering of children. Now we know that children, they're basically blank slates. Okay, they can be easily taught. They can absorb a lot of knowledge, and to kill a children is like killing somebody at the beginning, and you can easily absorb a child into a different culture and change their way of thinking, but that was not the case. The Bible also condones murder and xenophobia of people with different beliefs. This is discussed in Exodus 22:18, Revelations 21:8, Leviticus 20:27, Leviticus 19:31, Deuteronomy 18:10, Galatians chapter 5:19 through 20, Revelations 22:15, Galatians 5:19 through 21, Leviticus 20 verse 6. And I'll read one from the Old Testament as well as the New Testament. So we have Exodus 22:18. Exodus 22:18 says, you must not allow a sorceress to live. Let's see, Revelations 21:8. Revelations 21:8 says, but cowards, unbelievers, the corrupt, murderers, the immoral, those who practice witchcraft, idol worshippers, and all liars, their fate is in the fiery lake of burning sulfur. This is the second death. Now, anybody who knows witches knows that, yeah, some of them can be pricks, but most of the time, they're like regular people. They have regular needs, they have regular wants, they just want to live and exist in peace and harmony. So, why would you want to kill a person who's just trying to mind their own business? Makes no sense. It also, begs the question, why shouldn't you just kill yourself? These people had idols themselves. These people practiced sorcery and witchcraft. And granted, they were doing it through one of these gods, using their power, calling upon their power, but it's basically the same thing. Miracles and magic are synonymous. And so, I would just like to pose the question, like, who in their right mind would want to serve any of these 10 gods? If we see the example that Christianity has set, we see the mindset of most of Christianity. And, I have to say, not all Christians are bad. They don't act like elitists or assholes, but there are a lot that do that. And then you see a lot of the religious leaders of Christianity who are misleading people, who are taking and taking and taking from people, who are not, doing anything to help them with coping skills or help them solve their problems. All they do is feed off of their misery and they get fat. And that goes for any other religion. It's wrong. As for Judaism, the people who are just trying to do what's right, just trying to get by and exist, I have no problem with them. But you have to face the facts. You have to look at history. You have to know these things. And I believe that the original names of these gods that were mentioned in the Bible were removed so that people can't educate themselves about them. They just put titles in like God, Lord, Most High, so that people don't know who they're worshiping, what they're worshiping. So, now that I've gone over that, I hope that I was able to educate you, maybe perk your curiosity into history, because I feel that history is a good way to deepen your appreciation for your practice. And I highly encourage it. History is also another way to refute anything that comes your way when you deal with any haters, and people who come at you, they can't say anything when you know more about them than they do about themselves. So be sure to always educate yourself, read, absorb information any way you can, and learn how to articulate it in a way where, like an academic, or at least where it encourages people to go seek out knowledge themselves. And with that, I say good night, good practicing, and I'll see you next video.